The first thing I learned about Dante Salvator was the sound. Click. It came from somewhere near the window of his bedroom, clean and metallic, like the snap of a small bone. I froze with my hand on the heavy velvet curtain and looked over my shoulder, even though I had been told he was in a meeting downstairs. The room held his absence the way a church held incense. Dark wood, stone floors veined white like old scars. A suit jacket draped over the back of a chair so precisely it looked as if it had been arranged by a man who trusted nothing, not even gravity. There was a faint smell of bergamot, tobacco he hadn't lit yet, and night air that had slipped in through the cracked terrace doors. I had been in the Salvator house for 12 days and had never been sent to his rooms before. "Just clean, ragazza," Teresa had whispered in the corridor, pressing a ring of keys into my hand. "And don't look curious. Men like him notice curiosity before they notice fire." Teresa Bianchi had run the house longer than I had been alive. She was small and sharp, and always smelled faintly of lavender soap. She had been the one to get me the work when my mother's dialysis bills stacked so high on our kitchen table they looked like a second life we could no longer afford. So I cleaned. I folded one shirt. I straightened a stack of papers I was careful not to read. I dusted the black headboard. I knelt to wipe a line of ash from beside the bed and felt the room tilt so suddenly my breath caught. Not now. I closed my eyes until the dizziness passed. It had been happening more often the past month, little drops in the floor, sudden white flashes at the edge of my vision. The doctor at the clinic had ordered scans I still hadn't paid off. I had skipped breakfast. Again, it turned out hunger was very patient when rent was not. Click. The sound came again, closer this time. I looked up too fast. The doorway blurred, darkened, and became a shape of broad shoulders and stillness. He was there. Dante Salvator did not enter rooms. He altered them. Tall, black suit, no tie, white shirt open at the throat. His face was the kind that would have been called beautiful if there had been anything soft in it. There was. His mouth looked made for silence. A thin, pale scar cut through one eyebrow and disappeared into his hairline. In his hand was a silver lighter, open, flame unlit. Behind him, 3 men stopped in the hall so fast the whole corridor went silent. I tried to stand. My knees didn't agree. "I'm sore," the word broke in half when the floor hit me. I did not faint cleanly. I wish I had. It would have been kinder than hearing the tray I'd left on the dresser crash down after me, than feeling my cheek against ice-cold marble, than tasting blood where I'd bitten the inside of my mouth. Voices came muffled as if someone had shut a door between me and the world. "Boss, call Luca. Move. Not that doctor," someone else said. "The house one." Hands reached for me, not his. His voice arrived first. "Back." Everything obeyed it. When I opened my eyes again, I was on my side. Teresa was kneeling nearby, one hand over her mouth, the other shaking so badly the keys at her waist clicked against each other. A line of red had run from my lip to the stone. And with men and guns and fear crowding the edges of the room, the first thing that came out of me was, "I'm sorry, Teresa. I got blood on the floor." Silence. Not complete silence. Worse. The kind that happens when everyone hears the wrong thing at the wrong time, and no one knows what it means. Teresa made a sound like a sob trapped in her throat. "Elena, hush." I pushed myself onto one elbow. My head pounded. My apron pocket had turned inside out when I fell, and an envelope had spilled halfway open over the marble. Dante bent before anyone else could touch it. He did not ask permission. Men like him didn't ask the wounded girl on their floor if she minded. He slid out the folded clinic report with 2 fingers and looked at the image clipped behind it. A scan, grainy black and gray, my name, my date of birth. The follow-up note from San Celeste Neurology. His eyes dropped to the printed date. March 14, 2021. He went so still that for one absurd second I thought the world had stopped moving out of respect. Then he looked at me, not at my face, not at the blood, at me as if he had seen something come up from the bottom of a lake. "Where did you get this?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud. "It didn't need to be. My doctor," I swallowed. "It's mine." "From where?" "San Celeste." The lighter closed in his hand with a soft metallic snap. I had never seen power turn personal that fast. The men in the hall shifted. One crossed himself so discreetly he probably thought no one noticed. Teresa did. I did too. Dante crouched in front of me. He didn't touch me. Somehow that made it worse. His gaze moved once over my face, my hair, the split in my lip, like he was comparing me to something only he could see. How old were you on that date? 19. His jaw flexed. Luca Ferrero, the family doctor, arrived a moment later carrying a leather case and an expression that said he understood exactly whose temper he was entering. He was kind-eyed, dark-haired, maybe 40, and he smelled faintly of antiseptic and expensive coffee. "Out!" he said to the men at the door. No one moved. Dante did not take his eyes off me. "Examine her here. Dante, here." Luca sighed once, knelt, and shone a penlight into my pupils. "How many fingers?" 2. "What day is it?" "Thursday. Do you know why you collapsed?" I almost laughed. It would have sounded hysterical. If I did, I probably wouldn't have done it on purpose. His mouth twitched. Teresa actually made the sign of the cross. Dante did not smile. "Has she been ill?" Teresa hesitated. I hated her for it and loved her in the same breath. "She has headaches," she admitted. "Sometimes dizziness." She said it was nothing. "It is never nothing when people hide it," Dante said. He wasn't speaking to Teresa. He was speaking to a memory. Luca finished checking my pulse. "She needs food, fluids, rest, and a proper exam. I don't like the fall." I like the history even less. "I can go home," I said quickly, too quickly. Panic sharpened me. "Please, my mother's alone." Dante looked at the scan again. "Not tonight," he said. The cold under my ribs turned into something harder. "You can't keep me here." At that, his eyes finally met mine in full. I understood Teresa's warning too late. Curiosity wasn't what men like him noticed first. Defiance was. "I can," he said. "And for now, little ghost, I will." I should have protested again. I should have shouted, or cried, or made myself difficult enough to be sent away. Instead, I lay there, dizzy and furious, while Luca helped me sit up and Teresa pressed a glass of water into my hand with trembling fingers. Dante stood. The room changed around his height. "To the blue guest room," he said. "Station a woman outside the door. And send someone for her mother. My mother has nothing to do with this." He slid the scan back into its envelope and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "That," he said, "is what I'm deciding." Then he turned, and every armed man in the hall moved with him as if he were the thought and they were only the consequence. An hour later, after broth I could barely taste and pills Luca insisted I swallow, after Teresa tucked a blanket over me like I was 6 instead of 23. After I heard the heavy bolt slide into place outside the guest room door, I stared at the ceiling and understood one thing with perfect clarity. I had not been protected, I had been kept. The lock answered for him. I woke to the smell of starch, coffee, and old money. For a strange second I forgot where I was. The mattress beneath me was too soft, the ceiling too high, the silence too polished to belong to my apartment above the fishmonger's shop, where pipes knocked like angry ghosts every winter. Then I saw the carved blue wardrobe, the curtains thick enough to block out Judgment Day, and the woman posted on the chair by the door pretending not to watch me. Right. Kidnapped, but politely. My head hurt less. My pride hurt more. The woman at the door introduced herself as Bianca Conti when she noticed my eyes were open. She was elegant in the way knives were elegant. Cream blouse, dark skirt, black hair pinned perfectly, not one movement wasted. She worked in the Salvator offices, she said, and had been asked to help with domestic arrangements, which sounded much cleaner than house arrest. "Your mother arrived at dawn," she told me, setting a tray on the side table. "She is safe." I sat up too fast. "You brought her here, to the smaller guest house on the east side, so she can receive treatment without interruption. That wasn't his decision to make." "No," Bianca said. "But you're beginning to understand that he rarely waits for permission." I hated how calm everyone became when speaking about him, as if fear had ripened into habit a long time ago. I forced myself out of bed and crossed to the mirror. I looked like a girl who had lost a fight with gravity, pale skin, dark hair escaping my braid, bruise beginning under my chin where I had landed. There was a butterfly bandage at my temple I did not remember receiving. My mother, Carmela, had pressed both hands to my face the moment I entered the guest house later that morning. She was softer than Teresa, round-cheeked and tired-eyed, wrapped in one of the good wool shawls someone had found for her. Illness had made her smaller over the last year, as if the city had been paying its debts by taking them from her body an inch at a time. "Elena, what have you done?" she whispered. Collapsed with terrible timing. Her laugh broke halfway into tears. I told her most of the truth. I had fainted. The boss had overreacted. We were here temporarily. I did not tell her about the way his face had changed at the sight of my scan date. I did not tell her the house had guards at every door, or that the windows in my room opened only 3 inches. At noon, a man built like a refrigerator in a good suit appeared to escort me downstairs. "Nico Bellini," he announced with one hand on his chest, as if giving evidence in court. Driver, logistics, reluctant babysitter, victim of impossible female standards. He had a charming face, dark stubble, and the mournful eyes of a saint painted just before disappointment. I stared. "I'm sorry," he leaned closer. "Maria says men with discipline have attractive calves. I have been living on boiled chicken for 9 days. Do you know what that does to a soul?" Before I could answer, Teresa swatted the back of his arm with a dish towel hard enough to make him yelp. "It does to a soul exactly what it should do to a man who lies about taking second helpings," she said. Nico clutched himself. "This is abuse in a house of lawlessness." In spite of everything, a small laugh escaped me, real enough to hurt my throat. He brightened. "Good, you're alive." Dead girls never appreciate my suffering. Teresa muttered a prayer about patience. Maria, the cook responsible for Nico's torment, looked up from the kitchen counter with flour on her cheek and the expression of a woman who had long since accepted that men were unfinished creatures. She was in her 30s, broad-hipped, beautiful in a furious kind of way, and already halfway to family in the eyes of everyone in the kitchen. It was the first warm room I had found in the house. That warmth vanished when Dante walked in. No one announced him. They didn't have to. Italian had been flowing across the room in quick kitchen bursts, spoons hitting copper pots, knives knocking cutting boards. Then he crossed the threshold and the language itself seemed to step back and stand straighter. He wore charcoal today, no jacket. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled once, exposing strong forearms and a watch that probably cost more than my entire building. The silver lighter turned slowly between his fingers. Click. Every muscle in me remembered the sound before my mind did. His gaze landed on me, then on the soup in front of me, then on the fact that I had eaten almost none of it. "Why isn't she finishing?" "Because she's not a racehorse," Teresa said sharply. "You don't feed people by command." One corner of Nico's mouth twitched like he was preparing his own funeral speech. Dante ignored them all and addressed me. "Walk with me." I stayed seated. "I'd rather not." "Yes," he said, "I know." That was worse than anger. That was amusement without mercy. I stood anyway. He led me through a corridor lined with saints and dead relatives, out to a long terrace overlooking the sea. Palermo spread below us in heat and stone and church domes. The water beyond it was blue enough to be insulting. "I want answers," he said. "You have a strange way of asking for them." "I'm not asking." I folded my arms. "Then I have a strange way of giving them." His eyes flicked to the bruise at my chin, then away. "Tell me where you were on March 14th, 2021. The date hit like cold water. For a second I saw bright hospital light and heard a metal tray falling somewhere far away. Then the image was gone, leaving only a pressure behind my eyes. "I don't know," he waited. "I mean it," I said. "I remember parts of that year, not all of it." "Convenient." Anger burned through the dizziness. "Do you think I threw myself onto your floor for dramatic effect?" "I had a head injury that spring. The doctors said memory gaps happen. At San Celeste." "Yes." He looked over the terrace wall, jaw tight enough to cut stone. "Who hurt you?" "I don't know." That at least was true enough to make me hate it. He turned back to me. Until I know what you remember and why that date is attached to your name, you stay here. My mother needs her own bed, her own things, her medicines. They were brought. My pulse jumped. You went into our apartment. Men I trust did. You had no right. The sea wind pushed one loose piece of hair across my mouth. I shoved it back with shaking fingers. Dante watched that small movement like it mattered. Then quietly, do you always apologize for blood? The question struck me harder than if he had shouted. I stared at him. In my room, he said. You apologized to Teresa for the floor. Heat rushed to my face. I made a mess. No, his voice went flatter, lower. You frightened an old woman and worried about that before you worried about yourself. I looked away first. No one had ever said the thing aloud. People called me practical, silly, too soft. My mother called it my father's fault, said he had left me with his habit of noticing everyone else's hunger before my own. What do you want me to say? I asked. Nothing, the lighter clicked shut in his hand. I noticed. That should not have mattered, it did. When I went back inside, Bianca was waiting with a folder of medical appointments arranged under my name, a schedule for my mother's treatments, and 3 new rules written in her precise hand. No leaving the grounds without escort, no phone calls not cleared through the house line, no entering the West Wing after dark. Are these yours? I asked. They are his. I read the paper once, then tore it in half. Bianca blinked. Nico, passing with a crate of mineral water, made a choking sound of pure delighted terror. From the doorway, Dante watched the pieces fall. For one wild second, I thought I might actually win something by doing it. Then he spoke, calm as winter. You can tear the paper, Alina. The rules remain. I believed him because he said it like weather. They remained. I did not intend to save Dante Salvator's life. That was the kind of thing that sounded noble in stories and disastrous in reality. In reality, I was standing in Maria's kitchen 3 days after my collapse, sleeves rolled to my elbows, helping pipe cream into tiny pastry shells because Maria had discovered I knew the difference between burnt sugar and caramel and decided this made me useful. I trained for pastry school before life became rude. I had admitted when she found me correcting the angle of her sponge sugar basket. Maria had stared at me for a long, offended second. And you let me serve you plain cookies yesterday. I was trying not to be noticed. By me, she slapped a hand to her chest. An insult. Teresa, hear this. The girl has hands and kept them hidden. So there I was, in an apron again, this one clean and striped, filling cannoli, while the Salvator house prepared for a dinner that felt less like hospitality and more like a velvet-covered threat. Men in dark suits moved through the hall carrying documents, wine, small boxes that were definitely not jewelry. Bianca passed twice with ledgers. Nico wandered in with 6 cartons of sparkling water and the haunted expression of a man being denied bread by destiny. Maria, he said, eyeing the tiramisu in the cold case, if love were real, you would let me have 1 spoon. Maria didn't look up. If discipline were real, you would stop asking. He placed a hand over his heart. One day you'll miss this voice. I miss it now, Teresa muttered. I smiled despite myself and dipped my finger into a bowl of orange blossom cream. Smooth, bright, a little too sweet. I added salt, then reached for the saucepan of dark caramel I had reduced with blood orange peel until it smelled almost bitter. What are you making? Maria asked. I looked down at the glass cups I had lined up. Something layered. Under Maria's suspicious eye, I spooned in dark chocolate mousse at the bottom, then the orange blossom cream. Then poured a thin shell of amber sugar over the top that cooled into a shining surface. Fragile, Maria said. It has to crack before it tastes right. She studied me and her voice softened. What do you call it? I should have lied. Instead, I said the first true thing. Burnt heart. Nico wandered back just in time to hear that and sighed like a priest at confession. Every woman in this house is determined to make my life literary. The dining room filled at 8. I was not supposed to be there, but Maria sent me with the desserts because, if men are going to lie over my food, they should at least lie while looking at beauty. so I carried the tray in. The room was long, gold-lit, all polished wood and quiet male hostility. 4 men sat with Dante at the far end. A judge who never smiled, a port official with damp upper lip, Matteo Greco from security with his broken nose calm, and Vittorio Serra. I had heard his name twice already in the house, and disliked the air around it before I understood why. Vittorio was handsome in a colder way than Dante, his blonde-brown hair slicked back, his suit perfect, his smile easy enough to pass for human if you did not look at his eyes too long. He leaned in his chair like the world amused him. Dante sat opposite him, utterly still. If Dante altered rooms, Vittorio tested them. I set one dessert in front of the judge, another before Matteo. When I reached Dante's right side, I became aware of his hand resting near the table edge, bare, the knuckles faintly nicked. I remembered that hand not touching me on the marble floor and nearly forgot how to breathe. "Careful, little ghost," he said without looking up. I hated that my pulse answered him. I moved to Vittorio last. The scent hit me before the glass touched the table. Almond, not the warm bakery sweetness of almond flour, sharper, metallic beneath the sugar. My hand stopped. Maria used citrus, vanilla, coffee, chocolate, never almond extract. She hated it, said it tasted like perfume and poor choices. Vittorio's smile widened slightly. Am I that frightening? The room did not move, but I felt it paying attention. That cream, I said, hearing my own voice from far away, wasn't made in our kitchen. Maria went rigid in the doorway behind me. What? Vittorio's gaze chilled. The maid has opinions. I looked at Dante then, because somehow I knew if I looked anywhere else I would start shaking. Don't eat it, no one breathed. Dante did not ask why. That was the first frightening thing. The second was how quickly he acted. His fingers closed around the stem of the dessert glass and slid it away from Vittorio's reach, just as Matteo came half out of his chair, and Nico burst through a side door because apparently panic. Traveled faster than servants did. What happened? Nico demanded. If this is about carbohydrates, I want it noted I was elsewhere. Call Luca, Dante said. Maria seized the dish with kitchen cloths and sniffed. Her face turned the color of old paper. Bitter almond. The judge pushed back from the table so fast his chair scraped. Matteo had already drawn his gun. Vittorio remained seated, one eyebrow lifting in soft insult. You think I came here to poison myself? He asked. No, Dante said. I think someone expected me to trade plates. The room tightened. It was such a small thing, the placement. In houses like his, plates shifted for power, for hospitality, for insult. I had watched Teresa rearrange seating yesterday after a whisper from Bianca. If Vittorio's dessert had been meant for Dante and switched by habit, accident, or design, my knees went weak. Dante stood. All at once, every man around the table seemed to remember what he was when he was no longer being served. Vittorio rose more slowly. You're making theater out of perfume, he said. Perhaps, Dante's voice did not rise, but until I know whose hand touched that glass, no one leaves. His eyes found me over the table. For one impossible beat, everything else fell away. The guns, the judge, Vittorio's false patience, my own fear. It was just that look, hard and searching and unwillingly altered. Not because I was special, because I had become useful, and somehow that landed differently than it should have. Later, in the kitchen, after Luca confirmed poison so mild it was meant to sicken before it killed, after Matteo sealed the pantry and Dante's men questioned every server in the house, Maria grabbed my face in both floury hands and kissed my forehead. You saved him, she said. No, I swallowed. I smelled something wrong. Maria's eyes narrowed with kitchen authority. That is how women save men. They notice. Nico leaned against the doorway eating celery with the despair of a punished child. For the record, I also noticed things, mostly hunger and betrayal. Teresa handed me a glass of water. Why didn't you tell us you were trained? Because I clean rooms, Maria snorted. Not for long. That night, after the house quieted to a false calm, I stepped onto the back terrace for air and found Dante already there, overlooking the dark sea. Palermo glittered below like a lie told beautifully. He did not turn when he said, "You knew before anyone." I smelled it. Most people would have stayed silent. Most people in your house, maybe. At that, he looked at me. Moonlight thinned the severity of his face, but did nothing kind to it. "What else do you know how to do, Alina?" It should have sounded like ordinary interest. It sounded like the first move in a game I had not agreed to play. From inside, a door shut. Somewhere below, men shouted brief instructions into radios. Matteo was already moving through the grounds. Luca had taken samples. Vittorio had been allowed to leave only because not allowing him might have started a war before Dante was ready. Something had shifted tonight, not just between factions. Between us, and for the first time since I had fallen in his room, I understood that whatever answer he wanted from me was not the only reason he kept looking. Someone had already reached into his house. Someone was already moving. By the next afternoon, Dante had decided memory could be hunted. He did not ask if I wanted to go with him. He simply told Teresa to bring me a coat and said we were leaving in 10 minutes. "Where?" I demanded. "San Celeste." My stomach dropped so sharply I had to grip the back of a chair. Palermo had gone gray with rain by the time the car left the gates. Nico drove, muttering about traffic, civic decay, and the athletic unfairness of men who smoked and still had visible jawlines. Matteo rode in front, one hand near the holster under his jacket. I sat in the back with Dante, an entire expensive foot of leather seat between us that felt more charged than skin. The windows blurred with rain. The silver lighter clicked open and shut in Dante's hand, never once igniting. I watched his thumb work the hinge and hated myself for noticing his hands at all. "You don't have to do that," I said. "Do what?" "Make me believe you don't need it," I said. The lighter stilled. Rain stitched silver lines down the car window. For a second, I thought he might answer with something sharp enough to cut us both. Instead, he looked at the dark street ahead, his profile cold and severe against the storm. "It keeps my hands busy," he said. Nico made a soft sound from the driver's seat. "That," he murmured to the windshield, "is the healthiest thing any man in this vehicle has ever admitted." Matteo turned in the passenger seat just enough to glare at him. Nico lifted one shoulder. "What? I'm trying to make the atmosphere supportive." San Celeste sat at the edge of the old port district where the buildings had once been white and now only remembered it in patches. The clinic was closed, not abandoned exactly. That would have been kinder. It had the look of a place nobody wanted to demolish because memory was easier to board up than bury. The iron gate was still there. The moment I saw it, something tightened around my lungs. Rain, too much rain, a horn somewhere, the shape of a girl doubled over in pain, a man shouting. Someone slamming his fist against metal hard enough to bruise bone. Then, nothing. White noise behind my eyes. I stopped walking. Dante noticed before anyone else. Of course he did. "Stay with me," he said quietly. I hated that I almost obeyed the words for the comfort in them. "It's the gate," I whispered. "I know this gate." Teresa had packed me a scarf that morning, pale cream, too soft for weather like this. I had wrapped it twice around my throat and still felt cold. Now the rain dampened the fringe, and the iron bars in front of us blurred. "Open it," Dante said. The caretaker came running with keys after one hard look from Matteo. We stepped into a courtyard slick with rainwater and old leaves. The building smelled like bleach, mildew, and grief, left too long indoors. The reception hall gave me the first real fracture. I saw it before I remembered it, the desk, the broken lamp, the small brass saint on the wall turned crooked. My breath caught so hard it hurt. "There was shouting," I said. Dante turned to me. "I was here," I whispered. "I was here that night." The world seemed to lean. Luca had met us at the clinic with permission papers and the patient calm of a man who knew panic could arrive disguised as memory. He moved closer but did not touch me. "Don't force it," he said. Too late, the flash came fast, rain soaking through my shoes, my mother coughing in the waiting room weeks earlier, a second visit, then another night entirely, not my appointment, not my scan. I had been dropping off bakery orders from a charity fundraiser, because the side entrance paid cash and we needed it. There had been a girl in labor in the back of a black car. A dark-haired man carrying her, blood on his shirt, his voice raw with urgency. Open the gate, a guard saying no, orders. Then a woman, young, terrified, beautiful even in pain, sliding down the back seat and clawing at the man's sleeve. Giulia, I heard myself say. Dante went motionless beside me. I turned toward him too quickly, dizzy with memory. That was her name. No one spoke. I heard you say it. My hand rose to my temple. She was pregnant. You were carrying her. The guard wouldn't let you through. His face changed by almost nothing. It was enough to break my heart a little. I kept seeing it. I hit the intercom. I kept pressing it. I screamed at them to open the gate. My throat tightened. Someone struck me from behind. Luca swore under his breath. The scan, Dante said, voice rougher than I had heard before. They took you inside after. I nodded slowly. My head, I woke up there later. They said I'd fallen. You were told that because somebody preferred it. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere down the corridor, a loose door banged once and once again. Nico, beside the Saint-Crooked wall, crossed himself with more sincerity than style. I hate this building, he announced. I hate it deeply, spiritually, and with all medically supported portions of my heart. It should not have made me laugh. It did, just once, breathless and broken, enough to cut the terror. Dante watched my face like he had been dragged to the edge of some answer he had not wanted to reach. We're leaving, he said. No, the word surprised even me. Not yet. He looked genuinely angry then, not at me, at what standing here was doing to me. Alina, I need to see where they took me. Matteo shifted, ready for refusal. Dante studied me for one long second, then gave one sharp nod. The records room was downstairs. Luca found the light switch. The fluorescence flickered to life over shelves of boxes and locked cabinets. Dust sat thick on everything except one filing section near the far wall. Recently touched. Matteo saw it too. He drew his gun without ceremony. Boss! Dante moved in front of me at once, one arm barring my path without touching my body. The gesture should have offended me. Instead, it made something dangerous loosen low in my chest. A single folder remained in the cabinet drawer. Mine. The rest of the section had been emptied clean. Luca took the chart and flipped through it. Her original intake notes are gone. By whom? I asked. Not the clinic, Dante said. The clinic is dead. This was done after. He took the folder from Luca and pulled out the CT print. Same grainy image, same date. But clipped behind it, folded into fourths, was a handwritten incident slip the hospital had failed to remove. Female, 19, witness at gate altercation. Facial trauma after impact. Repeated statement before sedation. The blonde one gave the order. Blonde. For a second, no one in the room moved. Then the memory struck. Not Dante, not the guard. Another man by the gate, younger, handsome, dry beneath an umbrella while everyone else drowned. He had watched Giulia scream and had told the guard not to open. I knew that face now. Vittorio. The lights went out. Somewhere close, I inhaled sharply. Someone cursed. A hand locked around my wrist in the dark, firm enough to steady, not enough to bruise. Me, Dante said near my ear. Stay still. The room felt small all at once. Rain, breath, the smell of his coat, wet wool and bergamot and something colder beneath. A door slammed above us. Matteo barked an order. Nico answered from the stairs with language Teresa would have hit him for. Luca found his phone light, a pale beam cutting the dark. In it I saw Dante's face too close to mine, all control and fracture held together by force. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist once, accidental or not. It felt neither. He looked at my mouth. I saw it happen, the break in composure, slight as a cracked seam under paint. Then he stepped back, not because he didn't want to, because he did. When we reached the car again, soaked through and shaking, I knew two things with terrible certainty. I had been there the night his sister died, and Vittorio Serra had never really left it. The past had a witness now. After San Celeste, no one called me a maid, not aloud. The change happened in small, humiliating ways. Doors opened before I reached them. Men who had ignored me in corridors now watched my face for signs of what I remembered next. Bianca stopped handing me schedules and began bringing me updates. Even Teresa, who still fussed over whether I had eaten, touched my shoulder more gently, as if answers had made me fragile. They had not. They had made me angry. I spent the next 2 days with headaches sharp enough to split sound into pieces. Luca ordered rest. Dante ordered the same thing with less softness, which was somehow worse. I obeyed neither. I wandered the East kitchen, helped Maria with pastry orders for one of the family's restaurants, and tried not to think about rain on iron. "You hold tension in your wrists," Maria said on the second afternoon as I cracked caramel over a tray of hazelnut custards. "That sounds medically unlikely." "It sounds true." She took the sugar hammer from my hand. "What are you making?" I stared at the glossy gold surface, then at the dark custard hidden beneath. "Something with a shell," I said. Maria's eyes moved to my face and back to the tray. "Of course you are." I finished them anyway. Dark espresso cream underneath, bitter orange gel in the center, a sugar top so thin it would shatter at the first touch. I did not name them. I did not have to. Nico arrived at exactly the wrong moment with celery sticks and tragic dignity. "Maria," he said, "for the love of all merciful saints, tell me there is a lawful amount of mascarpone left in this house." Maria pointed her spoon at him. "If you say lawful in my kitchen again, I will show you unlawful." He spotted my dessert tray and actually whimpered. "Elena, if you loved me as a fellow prisoner, you would hide one." I almost smiled. "I don't know you that well." "That," he said, clutching his chest, "is how every great romance begins." The laugh came easier this time. It died when Bianca entered. She always moved like paper being folded, precise, quiet, impossible to read. Today she carried a sealed envelope and wore tension too neatly to be accidental. "This arrived for you," she said. I frowned. "For me? No return name." Inside was one sheet of paper, no letter, no greeting. "You were hit because you saw who closed the gate. Stop remembering or your mother dies the same way." My hands went cold so fast the page rattled. Maria saw my face first. "What is it?" I passed the note to her because I suddenly could not trust my fingers. Nico swore, not playfully. Bianca's expression hardened by degrees. "I'll tell Dante." "No," I said too fast. They all looked at me. "I mean, yes, but not in front of my mother." Too late. She was already standing in the doorway, one hand braced on the frame, shawl slipping from one shoulder. I crossed the room and lied with a speed that shamed me. "It's nothing." Wrong delivery. My mother had spent too much of her life reading my face to believe that, but she also knew fear when she saw it. She touched my cheek once and went back out without making me explain. The moment she disappeared, the kitchen shifted into action. Matteo took the note from Maria. Bianca asked who had handled the morning deliveries. Nico stopped pretending at comedy entirely. Dante arrived last, not because he had been slow. Because men moved faster in front of him and cleared the space before he entered. He read the page once. His face did not change. That frightened me more than if he had broken something. "Who had access?" he asked. "Kitchen door, deliveries, flower vendor," Bianca said. 3 guards rotated between 7 and 10. "Bring me the list." She went. Dante looked at me then, not the note. "How much more didn't you tell Luca?" I blinked. "What?" "The collapse, the headaches, the dizziness." He stepped closer. "What else?" It felt unbearable, being read by him in front of everyone. It felt worse that he was right. Luca had already warned me that the old injury left scarring. That untreated pressure could be dangerous. That the fainting spells might become seizures if I kept skipping medication, and pretending survival was the same as healing. I had nodded through all of it, bought half a prescription, and gone back to work because my mother's treatment mattered more than scans for a head I could still use. I had not told Dante because I did not want another reason to be kept. "Nothing important," I said. He let silence answer for him. Maria muttered, "Child." I stared at the tile floor. I couldn't afford the treatment. The room stayed still. Not pity, worse, understanding. "There's medication," I said, voice thinning with shame. Tests, maybe surgery later if it worsens. I kept meaning to go back. And instead, Dante asked, I kept my mother alive. He inhaled once through his nose, that was all. But something dark moved behind his eyes, something aimed nowhere safe. My mother had come back to the doorway without my noticing. This time she did not let me lie. She sold her school acceptance ring, she said quietly, for my dialysis, and she stopped taking the tablets because they made her sleep through work. Heat flooded my face. Mama, no, tears brightened her tired eyes. Let them know the truth if they are going to hold our lives in their hands. Dante looked at my bare fingers. I had forgotten about the ring. Or rather, I had taught myself not to notice its absence. His gaze dropped to the tray of untouched desserts. What are these? I almost laughed at the absurdity. Does it matter? Yes, I looked down. Espresso custard, bitter orange, sugar shell. What do you call it? I should have lied again. Instead, a thing that breaks cleanly and still cuts your mouth. Nico made a small, wounded sound. How is the girl the romantic in this house and still the saddest? No one answered him. That evening, Dante ordered a full sweep of the grounds, doubled the women posted near my mother, and had Luca bring every record connected to my treatment. I should have thanked him. Instead, I stood in the study doorway at sunset and said the cruelest true thing I had. If this is guilt, don't dress it up as care. He was behind the desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the silver lighter in one hand. The room smelled of cedar and smoke he still had not lit. What would you prefer? He asked. Honesty. At that, his eyes came to me in full. Honesty is that somebody kept you poor enough to stay breakable. The words landed like a slap. Before I could answer, Matteo knocked once and entered. We found no prints on the note. Of course not, Dante said. But one thing, Matteo hesitated. The Eastgate camera looped 22 minutes this morning. I saw Dante's posture alter by 1 hard degree. Who maintains the feeds? He asked. Bianca signs off. But the actual reset comes through Vittorio's old tech contractor. No one spoke. Suspected, not confirmed. That was how betrayal first enters a house, like a draft under a locked door. War announced itself without decency, not with gunfire first, with absence. Bianca did not come to breakfast. One of Matteo's men failed to answer his radio. The florist van scheduled for the front gate arrived empty, except for white lilies and a dead phone in the driver's seat. By noon, Dante had moved my mother to a second safe location and said nothing to me about where. I hated him for that. I hated myself more for the relief. At dusk, he took me with him to an old family chapel outside the city walls because, according to him, there were papers in the crypt registry from the year Giulia died, and he trusted no one else to search them quickly. Why me? I asked when the car turned off the coastal road. He watched the ruined convent come into view through the windshield. Because you notice what other people discard. That answer should not have warmed me. It did anyway. The chapel was cold, stone-bellied and half-abandoned, except for candles left by women who still believed saints listened better in damaged places. We searched downstairs among ledgers, donation books, and baptism records that had been hidden during one of the family's older wars. I found the first useful thing, not in a file. In the way one sheet had been trimmed shorter than the others and pasted over a page beneath. Someone altered this, I said. Dante came to my shoulder, too close, not touching. The almost between us had become its own kind of weather. Under the pasted page was a record of charitable transfers from Salvator accounts to San Celeste's emergency fund in 2021. Signed not by Dante's father, as expected, but by Vittorio Serra, acting under delegated authority while Dante was away on a port dispute the week Giulia died. He had access to the clinic, I said. He had more than access. Dante took the page, jaw hardening. He had the power to decide who entered. A shot cracked through stained glass above us. The world exploded. Dante moved before the sound finished. He hit me hard enough to send us both behind the stone altar as colored shards rained over the floor. Another shot splintered the wooden pew where I had been standing. Down, he barked. Outside, men shouted. Matteo returned fire. Nico, somewhere behind a pillar, yelled, "I'm too handsome for martyrdom." The absurdity hit a second before terror did. Dante checked the corner, gun already in hand, face gone calm in the most frightening way I knew. Blood ran from a cut along his temple where glass had grazed him. He did not seem to feel it. "Stay behind the wall," he said. "No." His eyes snapped to mine. The old fear was there. Not of me, for me. I could see it now, ugly and hidden and real. "Elena, if I stay here and you don't come back, what exactly do I do with that?" For one fraction of a second, something unguarded crossed his face. Then footsteps thundered above us. Matteo shouted from the nave. "Two inside, one flank." Dante rose in a blur of motion and violence so efficient it barely looked human. One man came through the side arch with his weapon raised. Dante put him down before I could process the angle. Another appeared at the stairwell. Matteo caught that one in the shoulder. Stone dust flew, candles toppled. The chapel filled with guns, smoke, and echoes. I should have screamed. Instead, I saw the third man moving in the reflection of a brass saint lamp before Dante did. "Left," Dante turned, fired, and slammed the man into the crypt door hard enough to crack old wood. Silence followed in ragged pieces. Then pain hit my arm. I looked down. A line of red was opening along my sleeve where a bullet had skimmed flesh. Dante saw it and became something I had no good name for. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, seized my wrist, then checked himself so sharply it was almost violent. His hands changed at the last second from grip to care. "Where? It's nothing." His look made the lie die instantly. We got back to the car under Matteo's cover while Nico complained to God, architecture, and his own cardio plan. Once inside the chapel guest quarters, one safe room, bare stone, a basin, emergency medical supplies. Luca arrived breathless from the convoy behind us and began cleaning my arm. "It's superficial," he said. "His temple, too." Dante did not sit. "Sit," I said before I could stop myself. Both men looked at me. I swallowed. "Your head." Luca, traitor that he was, stepped aside. "She's right." So I cleaned the blood from Dante Salvator's temple with shaking fingers while he sat on a wooden chair meant for old priests and sinners. He watched my face, not my hands. I tried not to notice the heat of him, the roughness of his skin beneath the cloth, the way he went absolutely still when I leaned in. "You should be more afraid," he said quietly. "I am, not enough." The words hung between us. I set the cloth down. "Of you," his gaze dropped to my mouth. "Of what being near me costs." That should have sent me back 3 steps. Instead, I said the small, exposed truth that felt like standing without skin. "I think that's the part I'm trying not to understand." Everything in the room changed. Luca, bless his survival instinct, disappeared into the hall. Matteo pulled the door shut behind him. Even Nico, who had been listing all the parts of his body he preferred unshot, went blessedly silent. Dante stood. He came close enough that I could feel the heat from his chest without contact. One hand rose slowly, giving me every second to move away, and stopped beside my face. Not touching, waiting. "Little ghost," he said, and it was different now. Lower, warmer, ruined by restraint. "Tell me to stop." I could have. That was the worst part. Instead I whispered, "I don't know what this is." His eyes closed for one hard beat, as if that answer cost him. Then his forehead rested lightly against mine. Not a kiss. Almost. When he spoke again, his voice had gone rough. "It's why I noticed you before I wanted to." He drew back just enough to look at me. "You bled on my floor and apologized to Teresa for frightening her. Do you know what women in my world usually say to me when they're hurt?" I shook my head. "Please." His mouth tightened. "You said sorry." The confession landed somewhere so deep in me I could not reach it with thought. He touched my cheek once, barely, then he stepped away. Outside, engines roared into the convent yard. More men, more guns. Matteo answered a phone call and looked up with murder in his eyes. "Boss," he said, "a warehouse on the south docks just went up." Vittorio's men took credit. Dante's face shut again, all doors bolted from the inside. War had arrived. War changed the house faster than grief ever had. By morning, The Salvetter estate no longer pretended to be a family home with armed edges. It was a fortress in daylight, guards at every stair, radios hissing through breakfast, Matteo sleeping in shifts with one eye open. Luca turning the east guest room into a clinic, no one called a clinic. And Teresa bled on my hands before noon. It happened in the central courtyard. My mother had asked for sun. Teresa had insisted on carrying the tea tray herself because accepting help, in her religion, was apparently one small step below treason. I was with Maria at the fountain table, arranging lemon tarts for no good reason, except that making neat circles out of pastry gave my hands something to do. The crack came from outside the wall. Not a dramatic burst, one controlled shot. Teresa jerked, the tray hit stone, and porcelain shattered around her like white birds. I screamed her name as I ran. The bullet had torn through the flesh high in her shoulder. Not fatal, not meant to be, a message placed where it could be seen by women before men. Matteo's people flooded the courtyard. My mother began to sob. Maria tore her apron off and pressed it to the wound while I dropped to my knees in lemon cream and blood. "Teresa, look at me." She did, furious more than frightened. "The cups," she said through her teeth. "They were the good cups." I made a sound that was half laugh, half breaking. Dante was there seconds later. I had not seen him cross the distance. His eyes moved over the scene once, Teresa alive, my mother untouched, me on my knees in blood, and something very cold entered the air. "Find the line of sight," he told Matteo. Then he looked at me. "What happens to people who touch her?" I understood that sentence before he ever proved it. Luca stitched Teresa in the downstairs study while the rest of us waited on nerves. Nico paced the corridor with a wrapped protein bar in one fist and prayer on his mouth like both were equally ineffective. "I know this is not the time," he muttered, "but Maria told me if I didn't stop stress-eating nuts, my jawline would vanish before 40. I'm trying to survive emotionally and aesthetically." Maria, seated with folded hands gone white at the knuckles, said without looking at him, "If you open that wrapper, I'll finish what the sniper started." He tucked it into his pocket with a sigh fit for opera. It should not have helped. It did, a little. By evening, Dante came to my room carrying a passport. Not mine. A new one, new surname, new birthplace, new life built in ink. "There's a ferry at dawn," he said. "From Trapani. You, your mother, Luca's nurse, and 2 women from my security team. From there, Malta. Then wherever you choose." I stared at the passport, then at him. "You're sending me away. I'm giving you the choice to leave alive." The room felt suddenly smaller, the heavy blue curtains nearer, the polished floor colder under my bare feet. This was the real exit point. Not theory, not threat. A door standing open while there was still time to walk through it. My mother would live, the treatments would continue, I could vanish. Become someone with no iron gate in her head and no mafia boss in her bloodstream. Then Teresa made a small sound of pain in the room across the hall. It wasn't dramatic, just human. It went through me like wire. "If I go," I said, "he wins." Dante's expression did not shift. "If you stay, more people bleed." "They already are." He said nothing. I hated him then for making room for my conscience instead of ordering me onto the ferry. It would have been easier if he had been cruel. "I had a life before this," I whispered. "Then keep it." I laughed once, quietly, because by then we both knew that was impossible. The bakery school in Naples, the tiny apartment. The patient little dreams I had lined up like glass jars. My mother better, one savings account, maybe someday a storefront that smelled like coffee and sugar instead of fear. All of it had already been touched. Even if I left, I would be leaving as someone altered. The danger had moved inside me exactly the way I had been afraid it would. Not fear of him. Fear of what choosing him said about me. "My mother can go," I said at last. "She should. And you." I looked at the passport in my hand, at the fake name waiting to swallow mine whole. "If I stay," I said slowly, "I stay as Alina Rossi, not hidden, not because you trapped me. Because I know what he did at that gate, and I know what he'll keep doing if nobody drags it into the light." Dante's gaze held mine, very quiet, very deep. That choice costs, he said. I know, no, he stepped closer. You don't, not yet. Maybe he was right. Maybe I still didn't understand the full shape of his world. But I understood enough to know this next part had to belong to me or it would rot between us forever. I tore the passport in half, not dramatically, cleanly, once down the middle. Something moved in his face then, sharp, painful, almost pride and almost grief. She leaves, I said, meaning my mother. I stay. He did not argue. That was how I knew he respected it. That night I walked my mother to the side gate with Luca's nurse and 2 armed women in plain coats. She cried. I cried only after the car disappeared, because daughters are stupid that way and think delaying a thing means controlling it. When I turned back toward the house, Dante was waiting under the courtyard arch. No guards near him, no witnesses close enough to matter. This is the part where you tell me I made the wrong choice, I said. He looked at the bloodstains still dark on the stone where Teresa had fallen. No, he said. This is the part where I stop pretending you don't know what I am. The truth of that settled between us. I crossed the courtyard anyway. I walked back in myself. The gate closed behind me. I should have known it would be Bianca. That was the cruel shape betrayal took in stories like mine. Not the loud men with old grudges, but the quiet woman who knew where the towels were kept, which guest rooms stuck in damp weather. How I took my tea when I was too tired to argue. She came to my room after midnight with a candle lamp and a lie practiced enough to sound kind. Teresa's fever spiked, she whispered through the cracked door. Luca wants you downstairs. I followed her without slippers, still fastening my cardigan. The corridor lamps were low. The house breathed in its sleeping way, distant guard steps, pipes, the sea beyond the east windows. We reached the service stair. Then the cloth hit my mouth. I bit twisted, fought harder than any sensible person with a head injury should have. Bianca swore as we slammed into the wall. The candle lamp fell, went out, rolled. A second pair of hands closed around my arms from the dark. Don't bruise her face, a male voice said. Vittorio. They took me through the lower cellar access, not the front, of course. Bianca had the keys. By the time the hood came off, I was in a storage room under one of the old port warehouses. The air wet with rust and seawater, chains hanging from hooks meant for cargo, not people. My wrists were tied in front, which told me something useful. They still underestimated me. Bianca stood near the door, pale and composed and ruined in a way I had not expected. Vittorio leaned against a crate as if this were a conversation over drinks. I liked you better as furniture, he said. I tasted blood where I had bitten my cheek. I liked you better as a memory gap. His smile sharpened. There she is. I turned to Bianca. Why? For the first time since I had known her, her control slipped. Not much, enough. My brother, she said. Dante promised to get him out 2 years ago. He never did. That's because your brother murdered 2 customs officers, Vittorio said lazily. Let's not make her work for every detail. Bianca's jaw clenched. Vittorio made the only offer that was real. So that was it, not romance. Worse, family, debt. Love pointed in the wrong direction. You looped the cameras, I said. I did. The note, she looked away. I told him not to threaten your mother. It was such a useless mercy I almost laughed. Vittorio pushed off the crate and came closer. Up this near, I could see what made him Dante's mirror. Not the features, the discipline, the way violence sat in him like education, not impulse. But where Dante's control concealed cost, Vittorio's concealed appetite. Do you know what happened after the gate? He asked. I said nothing. Dante likes to imagine I killed his sister by obedience. He crouched in front of me. The sweeter truth is that his father gave the order. No one enters, no complications. No doctors asking questions. His smile thinned. I simply understood the world faster than Dante did. The words went through me like ice. You hit me, I said. You were inconvenient. Bianca flinched at that. Good, let her hear it naked. He left you alive because dead girls are difficult paperwork, Vittorio went on. Then our dear Dante built a religion around guilt and called it honor. I wanted to spit at him. Instead, I looked past him at the room. 3 crates, 1 rusted pipe, 1 hanging coil of thin packing wire, metal table, open jar of industrial sugar glaze on the workbench from some food export unit sharing the warehouse district. Sticky, flammable enough with heat. Useful enough with time. My wrists were tied in front, underestimated. Vittorio followed my glance and smiled. Think quickly, it's one of the reasons he likes you. He left after that. Men like him always believed leaving was part of the performance. Bianca remained with 1 guard outside the door. You can still stop this, I said when we were alone enough to hear each other breathe. Her face went brittle. No, I can't. Yes, you can. No, she came close, voice shaking for the first time. You don't understand what loving the wrong person costs. That should have made me pity her. It almost did. Then I remembered my mother at the side gate, Teresa bleeding, Dante's temple under my hand. Maybe I do, I said. After she left, I began working the knot against the rough corner of the chair until rope fibers heated against my skin. Slow, patient, my heart thudded high and hard in my chest. Somewhere above engines, doors, men shouting, too soon for rescue or too late, the rope loosened a fraction, then another. A single paragraph of him came to me later, because Luca told me afterward what Dante looked like when Matteo traced the service stair and found Bianca gone. Dante did not shout. He did not overturn furniture. He stood in the center of the war room, with Bianca's missing key log in one hand and Alina's empty room in his head. And he understood with absolute clarity that if Vittorio touched what little softness remained in him, he would kill the man slowly enough to hate himself for years. Back in the warehouse, I got one hand free. The guard opened the door at the exact wrong moment. I swung the chair. It hit his knee. He swore and lunged. I grabbed the sugar glaze jar and smashed it into his face. Sticky amber glass and syrup burst everywhere. He staggered blind. I snatched the hanging wire, looped it around the door handle, and yanked the metal shelf down across the opening. Not enough to save me, enough to delay. Bianca came running, horror whitening her face. Alina, I threw the rest of the glaze at the floor between us. She slipped. The pistol in her hand skidded under a crate. You were right, I said, backing toward the loading ramp. Loving the wrong person does cost. Gunfire erupted outside. The whole warehouse shook. I had bought time. The edge of too late still waited. Rescue never looks noble from the inside. It looks loud and ugly and full of splinters. By the time Dante's men breached the warehouse, I was crouched behind an overturned crate with one cut palm, 2 bruised knees. And Bianca, on the far side of the room, crying in a way that sounded more offended than sorry. The guard I had blinded with glaze was moaning under the fallen shelf. Outside, gunfire ricocheted off steel like bad weather. Then the side door tore open. Matteo came first, low and lethal, weapon raised. Nico was behind him wearing a bulletproof vest over what looked suspiciously like a fitness shirt and shouting, "If anyone shoots my face, I will personally haunt all descendants." And Dante did not enter the room. He arrived in it. His gaze found me before the muzzle flash smoke cleared. That was the first thing, not Bianca, not the wounded guard, me. I stood too fast. He crossed the distance in seconds, one hand at the back of my neck, the other checking my ribs, my shoulders, my face, like he was confirming the shape of me against disaster. I'm all right, I said. He looked at the blood on my palm. No, you're not, I almost laughed. It came out closer to sobbing. Then his forehead touched mine once, hard and brief and desperate enough to count as a wound. When he pulled back, I saw what he had become on the way here. Not wild, worse, decided. Bianca tried to speak from the floor. Dante, he didn't even look at her. Take her. 2 guards hauled her up. Matteo moved to secure the room. Nico, breathing hard, peered around a crate, found me upright and placed a hand to his own chest. Madonna bless reckless women, he said. Maria told me if you died after I vouched for your pastry ethics, she'd never forgive me. Despite everything, I made a wet, startled sound that might have been a laugh. He pointed at the glaze on the floor. Also, if that is sugar work under combat conditions, I'm marrying the first baker who asks. Matteo muttered, "Move." We almost made it cleanly. Almost had become the shape of my life. A shot rang from the upper catwalk Vittorio should not have still occupied. Matteo turned toward it at the same instant Dante shoved me behind a forklift. The bullet meant for Dante hit Matteo high in the side. He dropped without drama. No speech, no warning, just impact. Everything after that blurred and sharpened at once. Dante returned fire. Men screamed. Nico, who had been comic relief until exactly that second, slid on his knees through broken pallet wood to reach Matteo while swearing at God, blood, and every cardio myth ever invented. "Don't you dare," he snapped at Matteo, hands pressing the wound. "You still owe me €50 and one apology for calling me decorative." Matteo's mouth twitched once, barely, alive. I crawled to them without permission. Nico looked up wild-eyed. "Tell me he's not dying." "I can't tell you that while you're crushing his lung," I said, already tearing fabric, already reaching for the medical roll on Matteo's belt. My old clinic volunteer training had been short and minor and mostly involved carrying trays, but pressure, angle, breath, those I knew. Nico obeyed instantly, which might have been the most shocking event of the night. "Lift him on 3, I said. 1, 2, Dante's gunfire stopped. Silence fell in hard pieces. Vittorio was gone. Not dead, gone. That was worse. We got Matteo into the armored car alive because he was too stubborn to do otherwise. Nico held pressure the whole drive and talked without stopping. A strange, panicked litany about half-marathons, Maria's cruelty. And the future meal Matteo was legally required to attend if he survived. At the estate clinic room, Luca took over. Dante stood outside the closed door with blood on his sleeve and murder in his posture. I approached carefully, not because I feared him, but because I suddenly understood what it meant to be the one person he could not hide from anymore. "He lived," I said. For now, the silver lighter clicked in his hand. "Open, shut, open. I should have killed Vittorio years ago," he said. "Yes," he looked at me. Maybe he had expected denial, I had none. "You saw what he is," he said. "I saw what he chooses." That landed. He looked away first. The corridor was dim, the marble cold through my stockings, the house gone quiet under the weight of almost loss. Somewhere downstairs Teresa was praying. Maria was undoubtedly threatening saints into cooperation. Nico was probably crying in a bathroom and would deny it under torture. "I could have broken," I said softly. Dante's gaze came back to me at once, but I didn't. Something in his face eased, not much, enough. He touched my bandaged palm with 2 fingers, careful of the cut. "No," he said. "You didn't." He was bleeding again from the reopened cut at his temple. I reached up before thinking and pressed the edge of my sleeve there. He went still. Neither of us kissed the other. That made it worse. By dawn, Matteo was stable. Bianca was locked below the west wing waiting for judgment. Vittorio had burned his last bridge and taken half the road with him. The final shape of him had come into view now, not just the man who closed a gate, but the man who would keep staging deaths and debts until Dante became as merciless as the father they both hated. When the sun rose over the sea, pale and pitiless, we both knew something plain. One of us might not survive what came next. Morning made no promises. The last battle took us back to where the first wound began, not San Celeste itself, close enough to smell the old rain in memory. An abandoned freight yard near the clinic docks, all rusted rails and corrugated sheds, where Vittorio had stored records he thought could buy him passage out of Palermo if the war turned. It turned. Bianca gave us the location before dawn, not nobly, brokenly. She sat across from Dante in the interrogation room with no makeup, no precision left, hands shaking against the table. I was not supposed to be there. I went anyway. Some truths only arrive if another woman is in the room to hear them. "He has the originals," Bianca whispered. "The clinic orders. Your father's signature, the gate command, and the transfer lists for girls moved through San Celeste under charity transport." She swallowed hard. He said if he had to drown, he would drag the Salvator name with him. Dante's face did not move. He already has, I said. Bianca cried then, quietly. Like a person finally understanding that motive did not improve the dead. By noon, Matteo, stitched, pale, furious at being left behind, was trying to argue his way back into command. Luca sedated that plan by force. Nico volunteered for transport and backup and announced, "If I die today, tell Maria I had excellent calves by the end. She'll say you still talked too much," Teresa informed him. That was how we went to war, with prayer, insult, and body armor. I rode in Dante's car because neither of us pretended separation was useful anymore. He drove this time. No driver, no buffer. Just the road, the sea on our left, and the silver lighter clicking against his thumb at every red light. "You should have stayed at the house," he said. "No," he glanced at me once. "That answer is becoming a habit. So is yours." A breath that might have been almost laughter touched his mouth and was gone. At the freight yard, everything moved quickly. Too quickly for fear to build into philosophy. Men spread out. Matteo's second took the east flank. Nico stayed with the rear van and complained over comms that tactical crouching was hostile to hamstrings. The records were in the central shed. So was Vittorio. He stood between stacked shipping crates and a portable burn drum, gun in one hand, folder in the other, as if he had staged himself for judgment. Wind dragged at his coat. Behind him, flames licked the edges of loose papers not yet consumed. "You brought her," he called when he saw me at Dante's side. "Always your one expensive mistake." Dante raised his weapon. "Drop it," Vittorio smiled. "You know the funniest part? I did what your father would have praised. I protected the family. You were the sentimental one." "My sister was 19, Dante said. "So was your witness." His gaze flicked to me with appraising cruelty. "And now here she stands, teaching you softness at the exact moment softness should get you killed." I spoke before Dante could. "No, he learned softness because he didn't let you bury it." Vittorio's smile thinned. "That was the thing about mirrors. They hate when the reflection chooses differently." The gunfight began not with a shot, but with a page catching fire and lifting into the air like a white bird. Dante moved first, shoving me behind a steel support as bullets tore across the shed. Men shouted, metal screamed. Nico yelled something over comms about cover and divine injustice. I saw the folder skid under a crate. I went for it. Maybe that was brave, maybe stupid. Usually those are relatives. Vittorio saw me move and fired low. The bullet struck the beam above my shoulder, showering rust into my hair. Dante's answering shot drove him back a step. Another man came from the side door. I hit him with the extinguisher canister hard enough to drop him, then crawled through soot and paper to reach the folder. Inside were the originals. Gate order. Payment authorizations. Clinic transfer names. Giulia Salvator denied emergency entry by standing security command under Vittorio Serra, acting for Carlo Salvator. The truth had weight. Actual weight. I clutched it to my chest and ran for the side exit. Vittorio cut me off. For one breathless second, it was only the two of us between the crates, his gun up, my back to corrugated steel. "You see," he said almost gently, "this is what women become near men like us." Evidence. He reached for the folder. I thought of Teresa's blood on lemons, my mother at the gate. Dante's head bowed against mine in the warehouse. Then I drove the edge of the metal clipboard Luca had clipped to the document straight into Vittorio's wounded shoulder. He shouted. The gun went wide. Dante reached us in the same second and slammed Vittorio against the iron gate panel stored along the wall, so hard the hinges shrieked. The two men hit like history, finally tired of waiting. What followed was not elegant. It should not have been. Dante fought like a man removing the last hand from his throat. Vittorio fought like the version of him that had surrendered everything human and called the emptiness strength. Dante won, not cleanly, not beautifully. When it was done, Vittorio was on his knees against the very iron framework he had once used to keep a dying girl out. Blood darkened the rust. Fire crackled in the drum. Papers swirled around our feet. Dante held the gun steady, Do it, Vittorio said, smiling blood. Become your father. At least then one of us won't be a hypocrite. Dante looked at him for a long time. Then he lowered the gun. Matteo's second stepped forward to take the prisoner. Vittorio laughed once, disbelieving, ugly, and reached for the ankle knife he had hidden. He forced the ending himself. Dante fired. The sound rang through steel and old ghosts together. Afterward there were sirens arranged through channels I was better off not knowing. There were bodies covered, statements forged and true ones preserved. Bianca, transferred into official custody with her brother's file tied to her confession. Matteo, alive but white with exhaustion, leaning on Nico in a scene nobody would ever be allowed to describe tenderly. Dante stood by the burned drum while the wind scattered ash over his shoes. I came to him carrying the folder. "It's over," I said. He looked at the papers, then at me. This time when he answered, the words were not weather, they were grief. "It is over." Peace did not arrive. It assembled, slowly, suspiciously, like a wounded animal testing whether the hand offered to it meant comfort or capture. The records from the freight yard detonated in all the right private places. Carlo Salvatier's name was not destroyed publicly. Families like his knew how to bury scandal under older money. But inside the house, the truth shifted foundations. The saint portrait in the West Hall came down. No one put it back up. Bianca's brother was arrested in a transfer nobody interrupted. Maria lit a candle for Bianca anyway and said mercy was not endorsement. Teresa complained the candle wax ruined silver trays. Matteo healed one insult at a time. Nico took personal credit. I kept him alive with pressure, leadership, and superior emotional support, he announced at lunch one day. With panic and loudness, Matteo corrected from his chair near the window. Nico pressed a hand to his heart. There's no gratitude in heroism. Maria set a plate of baked rigatoni in front of him. Eat! His eyes widened. Pasta for me, publicly. Have we become engaged? She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might detach. You ran into gunfire for my kitchen girls, one meal. Don't build a church around it. He looked dangerously close to tears. This is better than engagement. Warmth moved through the room before anyone could stop it. That was the life after war I discovered. Not happiness exactly. Permission. To laugh without checking the doors first. To sleep one whole night. To stand in the kitchen and make something useless and sweet because no one was bleeding, and that itself felt radical. I stayed. Not in the blue guest room. In a suite on the east side with windows that opened all the way now. Dante never asked me to share his room. That restraint became its own language. He visited late after the house quieted. Sometimes we spoke. Sometimes we stood on the terrace and watched Palermo breathe below us. Sometimes he touched the inside of my wrist like he still couldn't believe he was allowed. The first time he kissed me properly, it happened in the library with rain at the windows and no witnesses but books too old to gossip. Slow, careful, devastating. He stopped twice before that night became anything more. The third time I stopped him, not because I did not want him. Because I did, and I needed to say the frightened truth before my body outran my courage. I'm still learning what safe feels like, I whispered against his mouth. His whole face changed. He kissed my forehead then, not my lips, and answered in the only way that could ever have worked on me. Then we learned slowly. So we did. By winter, my treatments were regular. The headaches grew less cruel. Luca said surgery could wait. My mother came back from Malta stronger, louder, and entirely too pleased with the idea that wealthy criminals had fed her soup while she recovered. Teresa pretended not to miss her and failed. Maria taught me how to scale pastry orders for the family restaurants. Within 3 months, 2 Salvatore-owned cafes were selling my orange bitter custard under a name Nico insisted on marketing as Ghost Glass. No, I told him. Yes, he said. People love mystery and sugar. This is economics. Dante let us argue in his office one afternoon while he signed contracts. When Nico finally left in dramatic offense, Dante looked at the sample dessert in the box between us and said, Ghost Glass is terrible. Thank you. He picked up a spoon. It will sell out in 2 days. He was right. The proposal happened in no church and under no illusion. Just us, midnight, the East Terrace, sea wind cold enough to sharpen every breath. The city below us scattered in gold. He had the lighter in one hand, unlit, clicking once against his thumb before he pocketed it like he knew I no longer needed the warning sound to find him. "I have nothing clean to offer you," he said. I went still. He was looking at the sea, not me. That was how I knew it cost him. "My name carries blood," he continued. "My choices will always frighten easier men. There are rooms in me I will spend my whole life trying to keep locked." At last he turned. "But if you stay, Alina, you stay with every truth visible." My throat tightened. He took a ring from his coat pocket. Not huge, not theatrical. Old gold, a small emerald framed by 2 tiny diamonds. "Family piece, worn at the edges. This belonged to my sister," he said. "She told me once she wanted it reset because the stones looked like they were guarding something green and alive." His mouth shifted, painful and soft at once. I think she was right. I was already crying, not elegantly. "Dante, I'm not asking you for innocence." His voice lowered. "I'm asking whether you choose me with your eyes open." I looked at the ring, at his hand, at the city that would never become harmless just because I loved one man inside it. Then I placed my palm in his. "Yes," I whispered. "I do." He exhaled like a man surfacing after years underwater. When he slid the ring onto my finger, his touch trembled exactly once. "Thank you," he said, and that undid me more than anything else could have. I laughed through tears. "That's not very Mafia of you." A faint answer touched his mouth. "Little ghost, you were never very obedient." The nickname landed warm now, fully, like home built from a dangerous thing and made honest by surviving it. Below us, the city kept breathing. Above us, the night did not promise forever. It gave us ordinary, and ordinary was enough. 9 months later, the kitchen windows were open to August, not wide enough for birds. Wide enough for sea air, basil on the sill, and the kind of heat that softened butter too quickly if you didn't know what you were doing. I did know. That was the point. The East Cafe had doubled its pastry orders. Ghost glass still sold out, to my annoyance and Nico's unbearable delight. My mother had started helping Maria 3 mornings a week, and gossiping with such joy it should have counted as cardio. Matteo walked with only the slightest stiffness now, and pretended not to notice when Teresa put extra parmesan on his lunch. Nico and Maria were not married, not engaged, and somehow more ridiculous than both. "Don't smile like that," Maria warned him as she kneaded dough. "I can't help it," Nico said, carrying a crate of peaches. "You said my basil arrangement had vision. I said it was less stupid than usual." He looked at me with shining reverence. "Did you hear that? In her language, this is practically a sonnet." I laughed and turned back to the sugar pot before it could burn. The house had changed with us, not softened exactly, more honest. There were still guards, still meetings in low voices, still nights when Dante came in smelling of dark roads and decisions I did not ask him to make pretty. But the doors no longer locked from the outside. The West Hall held light now instead of portraits pretending at virtue. And in the mornings, he drank coffee at my kitchen table like the most dangerous thing in the room was whether Nico would steal apricots. I was glazing little lemon cakes when the knife slipped. Just enough to nick the side of my thumb. "Dio," Maria started. At the same moment Teresa, passing the doorway with folded linens, gave a startled gasp. And before I even looked down at the bright bead of blood, I heard myself say, "I'm sorry, Teresa, I didn't mean to scare you." The room went quiet, not entirely. The fan still turned. Nico still breathed with theatrical significance. Sugar still bubbled, but the human part of the room stilled. I looked up. Dante was in the doorway. He must have come in through the terrace entrance, silent as habit, because none of us had heard him. Gray suit, no jacket, sleeves rolled, the silver lighter resting in his palm. His eyes were on me with that deep, unreadable focus I had first learned to fear and then to live inside. For 1 second, I was back on marble. Not because I was afraid, because he remembered too. Nico, sensing history and self-preservation in equal measure, cleared his throat. I'm going to inventory peaches somewhere very far from this expression. Maria smacked his arm and dragged Teresa with her toward the pantry. My mother, who had no respect for privacy unless romance was involved, herded Mateo after them with a look of pure conspiracy. Then it was just us. My cut thumb. The kitchen heat. The old soundless ache turned into something survivable. Dante crossed the room. He took the towel from beside the sink and wrapped my thumb himself, careful, patient. Absurdly gentle for a man who had once broken another man's wrist with less effort than it took him now to fold linen over skin. You still do it, he said. What? He tied the cloth, looked at my hand once, then lifted his gaze to mine. Worry about who else is frightened first. I felt my chest tighten. That unsettles you, I asked softly. It destroys me. The honesty of it stole my breath. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, the place he had first steadied me in the records room dark. Outside, gulls cried over the sea wall. Somewhere in the house, Nico yelped about missing peaches and Maria told him suffering built character. I smiled and Dante saw it. Don't, he said quietly. Don't what? Look at me like that when I'm trying to leave for a meeting. So go. He did not move. Neither did I. This was our mature love, I thought suddenly, not fire without thought. Fire that had survived thought and stayed anyway. The ordinary life we had built was not innocent. It was chosen. That made it holy in a way churches never managed. He lifted his hand. The lighter clicked once. Same sound as the first day. Different world. Back then it had meant danger before I could name it. A warning, a wall. Now it was simply the sound of him thinking. The tiny metallic note that told me Dante was near. Alive, real, not a fever I had imagined into a man. He slipped the lighter into his pocket and leaned in to kiss my forehead. Not my mouth, my forehead, exactly where fear used to live. Take lunch before 2, he said. I laughed. That's the romantic line you're leaving me with. It's the line that keeps you conscious. Bossy, his mouth curved. Yes. As he turned toward the terrace doors, I caught his wrist. He looked back. I thought of Giulia, of Bianca, of the blood on the courtyard stone, of the life we had built anyway, not in denial of those things but in argument with them. Some nights, when the house was very still, I still wondered whether loving a man like Dante meant making peace with shadows that should never have touched us. I never found a clean answer. Maybe there wasn't one. Maybe love, in the end, was not innocence preserved under glass, but the courage to know the cost and stay human inside it. I let his wrist go slowly. He touched the ring on my finger once, as if taking attendance of a miracle. Little ghost, he said, and the name held no possession now, only wonder. Then he left for his meeting, and I turned back to the lemon cakes, the open windows, the kitchen heat, the life. Tell me the truth. Would you have chosen Dante, knowing what it cost to love him? The sugar held.